Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to another episode of The Shutter Show. My name is Ken Stacknick, and this is my co-host,
David Marlowe.
And we are here today to talk about the 1985 film, ReAnimator, directed by Stuart Gordon. David, how are you doing today?
Ken, man, I'm doing good. Doing good. Work's actually got some work propped up for myself for the next couple of weeks, which is always a good feeling. I don't like being on unemployment. It's one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, it's right now it's paying the bills, but prefer not to be on that whole system at the moment. But yeah, no, otherwise things are going great. How about yourself, Ken? How you been keeping?
No, not too bad. Enjoying myself here in Colorado. Enjoying the disparate seasons. We've had quite a bit of rain and such lately, but talking about yes, compared to the heat that you've been having, but there's nothing more exciting than talking about the weather between two people and their listeners who probably are not in the same area.
We're better friends than that, Ken.
Yeah, we should talk about something definitely other than the weather. And what we should definitely talk about is Stuart Gordon's ReAnimator. David, let me ask you this. Had you seen this movie before?
I had seen this movie before, not for a very long time. I think I first saw this movie in Chicago at the Music Box Massacre at the Music Box Theater.
Oh, okay. Why don't you tell our audience what that is?
Okay. If this is still a thing, I haven't been to Chicago in a while, but if this is still a thing, I highly, highly, highly recommend folks check it out. If anything, just go see a movie at the Music Box Theater in Chicago. But what this is it is a 24-hour horror film festival. As in, like, I've gone to this thing 3 times with my good friend Scott, who works as a sound designer in Chicago. And he is a horror movie and metal music entrepreneur. Like, this dude has introduced me to more movies than I can even fathom. He's the reason, Ken, why I've at least seen what I've seen so far. So feel free to write him a thank you note at some point. You go in, you bring in whatever keeps you comfortable in those slightly uncomfortable seats, and you bring what food you can, try to bring some alcoholic beverages if you can, and you try to stay up for 24 hours. Watching as many movies as possible. It starts from like older films, like they do silent films with a piano accompaniment, which is really, really cool. And then from there, they work their way up to more modern. And so without this festival, I wouldn't have seen movies like May by Lucky McGee, which is just, if you have not seen that movie, go see it. But yeah, I saw this movie for the first time at the Music Box Massacre. I also saw Basket Case.
The only thing I will correct you on, David, is that if you see a movie at the Music Box and it is silent, it is not a piano accompaniment. It is an organ accompaniment, because the Music Box. The Music Box.
Excuse me.
Well, it's just as far as I spent a long time in Chicago. I was technically born in Chicago, but I spent all of my 20s there. The Music Box.
It is an organ. It is an organ, not a piano.
I used to literally live around the corner. And one of the reasons to check out the Music Box is they are one of those old-timey theaters that has a proper organ and does proper old-timey shows, and you will get to experience
it's
a
also
way of watching movies that's just different than what you'd get at any of your local Cineplexes.
It's also where I experienced my first midnight showing of The Room.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Spoon throwing and all.
I have been a viewing there. I was at the 10th anniversary in Los Angeles. I've met Greg and Tommy a couple of times. Mm-hmm. Yes, the Room and I go a long way back. But actually, ReAnimator is a movie that is soaked deep in my bones. It is a movie that I have grown up with. I mean, I was 4 when it came out. I was probably 12, 13, I want to say, when I first saw it. My dad showed it to me. It was...
Oh, your dad showed it to you.
My dad had a tendency to suggest fun movies, excuse me, while we were at Blockbuster, and ReAnimator was one of those movies that, in particular, the fluorescent green day glow or like glow stick syringe was burned into my brain from an early age, to the point that the first movie that I wrote and produced when I lived in Chicago was a short film called Missing Pieces. And in that,
and that's the one you showed me, right?
Yes, indeed. And in that, even though like we shot it in black and white, but if you look at like the color poster and what it was on set, was they had that green syringe full of phosphorescent liquid that was pumped into somebody's neck that made them into a zombie. Like, this is a movie that I have like deep within inside me. I have deep nostalgia for this movie. So I'm going to gush during this entire episode about pretty much everything that has to do with this movie. And I just want everybody to know, like, if this doesn't vibe with you, if this isn't your thing, I get it. But I can't not love almost every minute of this film, every performance in it, I can't. I have so much of this movie in my own personal filmmaker DNA that it is almost hard to express without you just seeing it and then seeing some of the stuff that I've done and then being like, oh, well, yeah. Like,
and I think before we go on and start getting into the nitty gritty of this, I would like, for those who have not seen this movie, I do want to offer a little bit of a trigger warning. There is definitely a scene in this film that depicts sexual assault in the strangest manner, all for I would suggest like wordplay, joking. How like a head giving head.
I mean, it's to be fair, that
very
scene in particular, it is maybe one of the best visual puns in 80s horror comedies out there. It is, yes, a scene of sexual assault. It is also very silly and is probably something less likely to trigger you if that is something that you are sensitive to. It is, however, there, and I would never tell anyone how to feel, but it is there.
Which, to be clear, I have like a couple of opinions on this sort of situation where it's, I think when it comes to scenes like this and productions like this, where the actress Barbra Crampton. Barbra Crampton, she came in and actually she had replaced an actress that was previously going to play the role, but she backed out because of this scene. Like her mother told her to back out because she like did not approve of this type of material. And I do remember hearing in an interview that was the best thing that could have happened to them because Barbra Crampton was a fucking professional.
I mean, she is a scream queen.
Not that deciding not to do this film doesn't make you a professional, but like she put in so much of herself into this role and understood the concept of. She was able to take that scene and make it her own and empower herself through that scene during the shooting itself. And I think there are certain films where that kind of scene is predatory because it was done despite the actress being uncomfortable with it.
I mean, yes, no, absolutely. A huge number of scenes in 80s movies contain nudity because there is a line in the contract that stipulates that there needs to be nudity in the film in order to sell it, particularly internationally. And a lot of producers will get that nudity in however they can. Yeah, and a lot of them not so good.
Yeah, the 80s were the golden age of horror and horror gore effects, but it came with the trade-off of, unfortunately, there just being a lot of misogyny involving, what had to be done to get tits on screen because it sold.
Yeah.
But you just kind of, you got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt and kind of respect the situation. But there's a really, really good, there's a really good interview with a really good video with Maggie Mae Fish, where she talks about the difference between Stanley Kubrick and David Fisher.
David Lynch.
Sorry, David Lynch. Where the fuck did I get David? Oh, excuse me, brain fart. Yeah, the difference between Stanley Kubrick and David Lynch in how they approach working with actors, and it's sort of the idea of the auteur, and at what point is the art worth it, and is there a similar way that doesn't involve abusing your talent to get the same effect. It's a brilliant video. I watched it a couple days ago. I highly recommend people check it out. But yeah, so that's just my long-winded version of saying the trigger warning for this. But yeah.
The other thing, as I guess we will, if we're discussing warnings about this movie, is this is based on the work of H.P. Lovecraft, and H.P. Lovecraft,
a very well-known racist.
Yes, a huge racist.
And huge misogynist.
Yes. One of the this ReAnimator is one of the I think the 3 best H.P. Lovecraft adaptations, and it succeeds for the same reason that the other 2 H.P. Lovecraft adaptations work. And that's
which ones were those?
That would be Alien and The Thing, which are both movies that are not technically adapted from H.P. Lovecraft material, but kind of are adapting just the whole H.P. Lovecraft vibe.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at movies that are straight adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft that are good, you immediately start scraping the bottom of the barrel, because like ReAnimator is actually one of the on that 3 movies that I mentioned, one of the only ones based on an actual H.P. Lovecraft story, but it takes almost nothing from the original source material.
Though The Mist apparently is also a
The Mist, another great example
is a very
essence.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like very lightly based on the Call of Cthulhu.
Yes, no, that's another great example. Because you have something like Dagon, which is again adapted straight from a H.P. Lovecraft story, and it's also kind of not great. There's a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff that just doesn't translate to the screen, because a lot of H.P. Lovecraft is about the articulation of the essence of what is going on, and a movie can show a gibbous moon, a movie can show the wet cobblestone, a movie can show the haunting architecture of a northeastern town, but it doesn't do the same thing that H.P. Lovecraft is doing, because you're not getting the literature, you're just getting the vibe. And therefore the movies that just do the vibe are the movies that succeed the most with what H.P. Lovecraft is best at.
Yeah, it took, I think the modern day equivalent to H.P. Lovecraft, again, another artist who's very hard to interpret and bring to the screen, and the only person who can seem to do it is Clive Barker, who I deeply adore. But he had a very similar thing where if you read a lot of his stories, and especially his short stories, the way it's described on page, you're just, how on God's green earth am I supposed to bring that to the screen without A, being shut down, and B, like the audience understanding like what's happening necessarily. And I think this works to ReAnimator's strengths in the idea of A, they're doing this on a relatively lowish budget. And so the budget would have tripled if they did it at the time, if they were setting this in the time that it was written.
100%.
It would have been so much. So it just, from a budget standpoint, it was so much easier to modernize it, and it worked to its strengths. And I think it did a really, really good job of of taking the best parts of what is arguably one of H.P. Lovecraft's not so good short stories. Like H.P. Lovecraft himself hated this short story that he wrote. Like he hated it, was not a big fan of it. Like what, like he thought he also apparently wrote a lot of himself into this character, Herbert West, who is a fascinating character. And apparently like there's comic books about him, and there's a whole franchise based on that world, which also lines up in the same universe as the Evil Dead and Vampira and Conan the Conqueror, or Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
I know, like it's all very loosely.
Yes, no, it is much in the same. Yeah, no, it totally. It is it is in the same, like they are all in the same universe in the way that like Frasier is in the Saint Elsewhere expanded universe, because it's one of those like
it's fun.
Just I can see how you got there, but also calm down.
A nice little popcorn vibe. You know, it's literally just people having fun with it and writing almost what I would call fan fiction. But oh my God. And for one thing, I think what makes this movie out of everything is Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West.
100%. This movie does not work without him.
I first saw Jeffrey Combs as a kid in Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. That was the first time I was ever introduced to him as an actor.
Okay, nice.
And I thought he was just the creepiest, strangest actor in the strangest little character, like just little, he creeped me out as a kid. And in this, there is such an air of supremacy to him, to where he knows everything. Like no matter like what the cost, his science is what matters most, because his science will ultimately benefit mankind, but really it's just him tinkering.
He blows everybody in this movie completely out of the water. Like it is a shame that he is not a bigger movie star, because he just owns every single scene that he's in, no matter how young or old the actor is, no matter what's supposed to be happening. He just like steals every moment and runs away with the whole thing. And it is flabbergasting how good he is, and how much this movie, like it is so easy to see how this movie with almost anyone else in that role would be fine. Like it would be like an interesting footnote movie.
But then ReAnimator wouldn't be the cult classic that it is now.
Yes. Yeah, it would not be ReAnimator. Without Jeffrey Combs, this movie is
you can tell that Jeffrey Combs did his homework, and he just this is an actor who understands the essence of the character Herbert West. And it also helps the fact that like Jeffrey Combs is the center in this film, and having a great center for other very good actors like Bruce Abbott and Barbara Crampton and David Gale to all work off of. It's just like you have all these really good actors within the orbit of this amazing actor, and it culminates together into this stew of awesomeness. Pretty much, it's just the cat scene alone, and how much fun it looks like they were having on set.
I mean, I think an important person to bring up in addition to Jeffrey Combs with this right now is Brian Yuzna, who was the director of The Dentist. And that has a very similar vibe of this big, crazy, over-the-top 1980s horror film. But the central actor, who is like everything in both of these movies, rotate and only work in the orbit of this incredible central performance. And without that, kind of everything flies apart. Like the gravity just lets everything go and everyone's doing their own things. And I because both this movie and The Dentist have Yunza in common, I have to assume that is an aspect, a dynamic that he brings to the production that you wouldn't normally get, whether it's just simple script notes or notes on the day to the actor. something, but both of these movies both have that central aspect to them, and I think that's something very important to discuss.
Mm-hmm. No, I could not agree more. And I don't know, I'm fascinated by this because, and I think, and several times Stuart Gordon has even, like, he's come out talking about the material that this is based off of, because like at the time before he made this film, he was told about this, about, because he was a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, though even he acknowledges that H.P. Lovecraft was in fact a terrible human being, which again is another thing of like, is the debate of separating the art from the artist. Like that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But Stuart Gordon had been told about his short stories, and primarily about ReAnimator, which was out of print at the time. That is just how low key this story was doing. And so he read it, and he was planning out the film as he was reading it. It is a, oh, I watched this film again, and the vibe of it, like mixed together with an incredible score. Who was it who did the score? It was
the score is by Richard was it Richard Brand? Sorry, Richard Band. And his main inspiration was the Psycho score by Bernard Herrmann,
which makes perfect sense.
Oh, totally. I mean, there's so much of this movie that is references to other classic films. As simple as like the beginning and the end of the movie start with essentially the same image, which is a medical intern performing CPR on someone and them being told this person isn't going to survive. And one of the famous pieces of advice that Orson Welles gave to Peter Bogdanovich when he was making the last picture show was to start a movie with the at the beginning and the end with the same image. There is the swinging light in the basement when they bring the cat alive for the first time, which I'm pretty convinced is a reference to the original Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. There's the Psycho score. There are, and then there are the countless references to Frankenstein, whether it's the mad scientist aspect, the fact that Dr. West totally and completely looks like Frankenstein himself. Like it's kind of Dr. Hill.
Yeah. Well, and the character of Dan Kane, played by Bruce Abbott, was supposed to be kind of the Igor-esque character, which is another great thing about this film, is that Jeffrey Combs is not the main character. Dan Kane is.
Yeah.
And that's another, using a supporting character to lift up the main character and creating this almost foil. Because after a while, once Dan Kane sees what Herbert West is working on, he realizes there's something here. He's done something amazing, and I feel like I need to be a part of this. But what he doesn't understand is just how truly insane Herbert West is. And it's in ReAnimator, which I believe is called Herbert West ReAnimator.
Yes.
It's completely told from the perspective of the narrator, which is sort of the Igor, his assistant, which I can't recall if they shared the same name as this character played by Bruce Abbott. But then you care about him because of his relationship with the character Megan Halsey, played by Barbara Crampton. And they do this really good job in this film of making you care about these two and wanting them to make it out of there. And just seeing Herbert West play Dan Kane all throughout this. And whenever you see Jeffrey Combs interact with Barbra, and her character Megan, you see he looks at her as you're an obstacle. I need to figure out how to get you the fuck out of here. I don't know. As an actor, I adore scenes with these three because they just play off each other so goddamn well. It's a masterclass. Like it is truly spectacular.
Well, it would be so easy for Jeffrey Combs's character to come off as just like a creepy weirdo, for him to come off as just this guy that nobody should trust. But like,
and he comes off as such, but
I mean, yes, but like I remember seeing this movie as a kid, and I was always kind of on his side. I was like, yeah, I know, but like he's conquering death. Like, yeah, he's a little weird.
If the school had just gotten behind him and given them the resources that he needed, maybe he would.
Yeah, what he's doing is crazy, but he's also not wrong.
Yeah. What pushes Bruce Abbott's character Dan to go to the lengths that he goes to is when Dean Halsey pulls his scholarship, literally just for coming to him with this information. He told him this in confidence, and the institution that he trusted in completely fucked him. And so he went to desperate lengths to see this out because he knew that there was something to this. But what he didn't understand was just how deranged Herbert West was, which I think there's an interesting, just like I listened to a little bit of just an audiobook of this, of ReAnimator. I think an interesting difference where they sort of throw a little bit of the novel away for the camp of the 80s is where he's just shooting up bodies willy-nilly with the serum that he's created. Whereas in the books, like he weighs, like he's a doctor. He weighs the bodies. He takes in mind their medical history. Even his assistant makes a point of saying, hey, this one's heart isn't the best. Maybe we should think about a different subject. To which then like you see the insanity that is Herbert West and saying like, I need the results no matter what. This is taking up too much time. Can we just do this? So the movie holds the essence of him, but it goes, I don't know, it twists it in a way that works to the camp of the 80s.
There's a huge amount of this movie that steers directly into its 80s vibe. And it wasn't until I started kind of writing down the number of like 80s comedy cliches that I realized how much this movie, well, I mean, yes, but like how much of this movie has Animal House in it? How much this movie has like Revenge of the Nerds in it? How much of this movie? Well, because like, all right, so I mean, above and beyond your unnecessarily sex and nudity, right? Which is a very 80s thing. You have your pretty mad Puritan rich dad. You have a foreign exchange student. You have a whole foreign, like stranger in a strange land. You have the whole jocks versus nerds thing. Like the main character very much in comparison to Herbert West is like, he's always kind of has his shirt off and he's like nailing the dean's daughter, which again, another total 80s thing that happens.
And a reason why I'm not playing the film in the background like I do with most of our films.
Because yes, there's a lot of nudity. Well, not a lot of nudity, but too much nudity we can't get around.
I mean, there's full on bush.
Yeah, well, like banging the dean's daughter. You have all the funny roommate hijinks. You have like the idea of the science being like straight magic in the same way that like in Superman 3, Richard Pryor is just like, I guess I'm a computer hacker now. And they're like, how? And he goes, I don't know. And he just keeps typing. And then the computer just does like magic in the same way that like the science that happens in Weird Science, or what's it called? What's the one with Val Kilmer? Real Genius.
I was gonna say The Island of Dr. Moreau.
No, but like the 80s, like there's an 80s nerd school vibe that I never quite realized permeated the entire edge of this movie until I started like writing down all the stuff that happens in this movie in relation to that. I mean, like just even the fact that like it is really obsessed with like the dean and grants and like what's happening at the upper edge of academia and like who's being suspended as if at Harvard when a student gets suspended, as if like that's the big thing that happened that week at the school. Like, no, unless that student is Natalie Portman, then it's just like a thing that happened with the like administration of the school, and this person isn't allowed to come here anymore. But here, every single like professor and student is like bringing in a big grant, or is dating the dean's daughter, or is going to be giving a big speech, or is a transfer student who worked with another great doctor who might or may not like, break the research. And it's like, no, school is pretty boring, actually. Like, yes, every now and then there's like a big one of these situations, but like only in the 80s, like only in 80, like we just don't see those anymore. Like, when was the last movie you could think of where like a student went and razzled with the dean? And like, right, it's been like a while. Was a while.
Like old school, maybe?
I mean, yeah. And even then, the whole point is like, well, of course they'll razzle with them. They're really old and they shouldn't be here. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's almost completely different, from like, but what happens when a guy tries and rolls into the girls' school? And you're like, well, okay, that's not like a usual situation. That's a predator doing a bad thing. This old school. Yeah, no, the problem is they're like 35-year-olds trying to start a frat. That's weird. Not the problem is, frats always getting into fights with the dean. No, I don't think frats do that often. I think that's just a leftover from Animal House. But like, it's crazy how much this movie has to do with Animal House. The other movie that I want to mention in relation to this, and I don't know how else to make the transition because it's just interesting and weird. There are at least two weird hardcore connections to Die Hard in this movie.
Yes. You and I were talking about this earlier. I'm
that we
so
need to
curious.
discuss. So first off is the professor that Herbert West trains under originally in Switzerland is named Hans Gruber, which is Alan Rickman's character from Die Hard. Also, the end of this movie ends with the main character in gray pants and a white t-shirt, or say a white
wife beater.
Wife beater, a shirt, whatever the
tank top.
Tank top, sure. Whatever I'm pretty sure whatever the appropriate term is, wife beater is not the term anymore, but is in that. And then he's also got like a strap over his chest. It is so, if you were to release the video of this today and you just wrote it as like Die Hard parody, people would be like, oh yes, clearly that's what you're doing. And it's crazy that this movie that came out like 3 years before Die Hard, which means it was shot 4 or 5 years before Die Hard, has some pretty interesting Die Hard influences. So if anybody knows the screenwriter and of Die Hard or of ReAnimator and can find out if there's any information, if there's any if I don't know if we're on to something here, or if this is just nonsense.
Like DM us, email us on our Shitter Show Gmail.
Yeah, hit us up on the Instagram or the Gmail, any of the things.
Genuinely curious about this. That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, at the same time, sure, Hans Gruber is, I'm sure, a common name in that particular area.
Well, I mean, so it's one of those things like, so in the 1950s version of The Blob, starring Steve McQueen, McQueen plays a character named Homer Simpson. And it has no connection to The Simpsons whatsoever, other than it's a funny coincidence. But Steve McQueen 100% played Homer Simpson in The Blob. And it's just one of those, sooner or later, something is going to cross paths with you creatively. And this may be one of those things. But also, I'm just curious, maybe if someone out there knows John McTiernan, you can ask if there's, some secret love for ReAnimator out there.
Mm-hmm. That's, oh goddamn. Because here's the thing, like also like Ken, have you seen any of the other movies? Have you seen Bride of ReAnimator? Have you seen From Beyond?
I've seen From Beyond not that long ago, and it has been a while since I saw Bride of ReAnimator, but I have enjoyed the entire H.P. Lovecraft Stuart Gordon crossover extravaganza.
Okay, yeah, because I have only seen ReAnimator. I have not seen Bride of ReAnimator. I haven't seen From Beyond. Things have been a little crazy. I usually like to do a deep dive if there's more movies attached to it, because I like to I think a good way to break apart the quality of a franchise or a film is to sort of dive into one of the bad versions, or like whether it be like a sequel or a retcon or whatever, or a remake, because it does help you understand what makes something like the original so good. Is that like, cool, this filmmaker just didn't understand the vibe or the energy that is this property. So yeah, I know. I guess I'm curious on your opinions of the sequels and whether or not they're worth checking out.
So Bride of ReAnimator, I think, is interesting and kind of fun. It's not nearly as fun as the first movie. It doesn't have nearly the cohesion or movement. One of the things I think that works really well about ReAnimator is the fact that it is kind of a bullet train. Like from almost moment one, it never stops moving. It never stops expanding. It gets crazier and crazier as the movie goes along. I think it's one of the best examples of a movie that jumps the shark and jumps the shark well. Like an hour into the movie, when Dr. Hill loses his head and everything happens from there, it's just such a good expansion of what's happening in the movie already, but you're not expecting it, so it keeps things fun and interesting. I think From Beyond is like, all right. So, well, I will say, if you love ReAnimator, Bride of ReAnimator is worth checking out. I think you should definitely see From Beyond. It's got some really interesting ideas. Which
one came first? Which is
God damn it, David.
Sorry, I'm making you do work.
No. So From Beyond is 1986. So that is like the next year. And then Bride of ReAnimator is 1989. So a couple years after that. So that is a great example, I think, of Stuart Gordon taking what he thinks works in ReAnimator and reworking it into a new story that's similar but still different and new with From Beyond, and then doing the ReAnimator thing again with Bride of ReAnimator, which again has more connections to the old school film world, with just the title Bride of ReAnimator, clearly a reference to Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, big. And I do remember seeing in just a couple of tidbits that Stuart Gordon made a point of saying that there's so many vampire films, there's so many Dracula films, there's not enough Frankenstein films. And he keeps going to ReAnimator and H.P. Lovecraft, saying like, this is one of the few other Frankenstein variations that you'll see that's actually good, or actually like offers you something. And I like the idea of like the difference between H.P. Lovecraft and Mary Shelley is God, what was it? I think it was like H.P. Lovecraft is an injection of evil. Mary Shelley is a shock of life. So like there's that energy and that difference between the two artists and their renditions of the mad scientist bringing people back to life.
I mean, like, if you want to talk about mad scientist movies, that's an incredibly short list. Like, we talked about American Werewolf in London a couple of weeks ago, and the werewolf list is pretty short. The corpse reanimation list is like this Cemetery Man, aka Della Morte, the original Frankenstein, Burke and Hare, if you want to be really, really generous.
I'll be real gauche.
Yeah, I mean, like be real. I mean, there are definitely other ones, but they are not.
But Ken, what about I, Frankenstein?
Oh God, the movie where they were like, "What if we made Underworld, but it was sexy Frankenstein?"
Yeah. Guys, what if
Frankenstein?
What if Frankenstein fucked?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a real wild roll of the dice.
Was that Aaron Eckhart?
Yes, Aaron Eckhart. Yeah. And on top of it, like a $90 million roll of the dice.
I would say poor Aaron Eckhart, but he's stupid rich, so not poor Aaron Eckhart.
I mean, after that movie, I mean, as long as he saved some of it, he'd be fine. Like, but yeah, I mean, like one of the big things with that is like, yeah, that's a $65 million roll of the dice, which is wild.
What was the budget for ReAnimator, if I may ask? Do you have that on hand?
The ReAnimator budget.
How much did it cost and how much did they make?
Around let's see, the first ReAnimator movie was around $1 million.
Okay.
Which, I mean, with not too shabby.
Adjusted for inflation, it'd be about like 12 million, maybe.
Something like that. And then it made about $2 million. So like,
so it made twice its budget.
I mean, Stuart Gordon had definitely a career after this, so it definitely wasn't a movie that ended up.
He co-wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right?
Yes. Stuart Gordon is one of those people who has some really interesting credits like that. Same thing that like M. Night Shyamalan wrote She's All That. Like just one of those.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
Wait. Whoa. Wait. You're dropping this bomb on me now, Ken?
Yeah, or like Joss Whedon was one of the main Joss Whedon and J.J. Abrams were two of the main screenwriters on Armageddon.
I did know this. Yeah, yes. This I did. No,
Joss Whedon, also the main screenwriter for Alien Resurrection.
Yes, that I know, unfortunately.
Well, it's just one of those, you're not necessarily expecting that person.
Didn't Joss Whedon direct Aliens Resurrection?
No. Alien Resurrection is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who is the director of Amelie. But then also you find out that J.J. Abrams was one of the main screenwriters on Regarding Henry, the movie where Harrison Ford gets amnesia and really likes Ritz crackers.
Yeah, it really makes me so sad that Stuart Gordon is no longer with us, because if I would have him write and direct any particular movie, it would be the adaptation of Michael Crichton's Micro. I don't know if you've ever read this book, but if you love Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, holy fucking shit, you will love Micro. Just imagine a bunch of college students who get brought up into this weird corporate conspiracy where they can shrink things down to size, and then the evil CEO shrinks them down to size and releases them into the wilderness of Hawaii.
Sounds about right.
It is amazing, and I wish Stuart Gordon were still alive so that he could write and direct, or at least is Yasna still with us?
No.
No, god damn it, motherfucker.
Wait, who? Yasna? I think
am I pronouncing that correctly?
I believe Yasna
is Yasna. He also co-wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes, he is 71 years old.
Okay, so there's still time. Yasna, yes. If you listen to this obscure podcast, I need you to do me a favor, and I need you to pen Micro for me, and I need you to be the director.
Yikes. Okay, so he appears to have not really worked since 2010.
Great. Well, it's about time he hopped back in the saddle.
There we go. Yeah, we'll bring him out of retirement. I'm sure he's totally fine. And I'm
sure he's spry.
In 2011, he directed 60 Years of Solitude in Year Zero.
Is that just his retirement? Is that?
I mean, that's the last thing that I can find. 2018, he was in a short as an actor called It's a Skater, and also all new. And then also he was interviewed in 2015 for the movie Dolls. It doesn't
based off the old like the 1980s Dolls.
Maybe. I mean, I worked on a movie called Dolls. He's a special thanks on a couple of what looks like bonus features. I'm
deep dive.
I'm guessing Brian is doing fine, but also not doing great, or he just made enough money that he doesn't have to work anymore.
Yeah, Dolls was like
way,
Dolls was 1987.
Yeah,
and that was directed by Stuart Gordon.
Yeah.
Okay, so I imagine then that Yuzna was on that.
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple of lines in this movie that I want to call out as being just amazing. Before we finish,
there's some great ones.
There's some great screenwriting in this, but I killed him. He's dead. Not anymore. Just an amazing back and forth. But perhaps my favorite line in this whole movie, a movie that like makes me stand up and scream, is when he says, when Herbert West,
I think I know this.
Yeah. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
Is that where your whole thing where you say guys, when I watch movies with Ken, like when we went to go see Army of the Dead in the theater for the first time, Ken has been in a theater for over a year. Every time he kept yelling at the screen, anytime like there was something you're like, just like, oh yeah, no, the director is pulling some real ego here. He just goes, get a job. Is that what that's from?
So no, not completely. It is a combination of what one of my he's not technically my uncle, but he's my Uncle Bill, for lack of a better term. He will always say to the dog, get a job. And I've always thought it was really funny. And also this movie where he says to the severed head, get a job. And so it's
a job in a sideshow.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a combination of a reference to both of those things. But it just tickles me to no end every time.
There is another favorite line that I have where he's trying to explain the dead cat in his fridge.
Oh my God.
And he goes like, well, I'm busy moving bodies. What should I have done? Left a note? Dead cat, discuss later.
No, cat dead, details later.
Yeah, cat dead, details later.
Yes.
This movie is comedy gold. It is, I would say it's like, it is one of the top horror comedies out there. It is so goddamn good.
And it's because it is both nuts but real. Because like, so that moment when he says that, one of the most socially awkward moments I've ever been a part of was I got a phone call from my brother's now ex-girlfriend, who was just like, hey, so I came over to see your brother and his dog is dead in the side yard. What do I do? And I was like, call my mom. Like, he had been working an overnight, so he was asleep. And like, on top of, I don't even know what, from like a health department standpoint, you're supposed.
So like, while he was asleep in bed, his dog was dead in the hallway?
Like in the side yard. So like, she came over to like see him after work, and like the dog, who was old and died of natural causes, passed off in the side yard. And so she was like, well, do I wake him up and tell him? And I was like, no, call my mom, who both grew up on a farm and knows what to do with the corpse of an animal, which I do not know what you're like. I'm pretty sure that legally,
I mean, you've seen a kitten torn to pieces by terriers, but
yes, but like, I'm pretty sure that what you're supposed to do is not just dig a hole in the backyard, and you definitely don't do it without telling the owner. But that owner
Greg.
is also,
and I've met Greg, by the way, guys.
Yeah,
I want to give Greg a big old hug. I'm sure he's over it.
I mean, it was several years ago, but it was exactly one of those, like, if I was Herbert West and like I was stuck in that situation.
Stick it in the fridge.
Yeah, I might put it in the fridge.
Dead dog, details later.
Yeah, I would not leave that note. It was one of those wild moments where both the ridiculousness of the situation is funny and over the top, but you also recognize it as real and understandable and relatable. And as a result, that makes it resonate. That makes it work with us. Like, or at least it's what made it work with me, because like and that's what's so great about Jeffrey Combs' performance, is that as nuts as he seems, you also are kind of on his side. You don't immediately write him off. Like if he had been played by Christoph Waltz or Rutger Hauer,
Ooh.
You know what I mean? And where he's just playing the evil German who's doing the bad things the whole time.
Do you think Christoph Waltz can do an American accent?
I mean, I think the point,
that would be like, I feel like that would also be like hearing a dog go meow.
I mean, it's to me, it's the brilliant understanding of the direction in the acting in this, in that the easy thing to do in this movie is to make Herbert West a Nazi and make him talk like this the whole time and do awful things and be weird and have the cat in the fridge and be like, why do you people not understand what I'm doing? Why are you so upset about, so I just put a cat in the fridge. What did you want me to
stop
do?
being such a Nazi boy.
Yeah. What you want me to do? Leave a note? Ridiculous. You, like, the movie wouldn't work because you wouldn't kind of buy, like, you immediately would just be like, just throw this dude out. This dude is totally a lunatic. Just get rid of him. But instead, you're kind of like, well, he is conquering death. So maybe
death, but even before like Dan realizes that, you're just like, well, no, like and this is the brilliance of this character, Herbert West, is like, and the way that Jeffrey Combs plays him is that he's a good liar. He's a very good liar. He doesn't necessarily hide what he's thinking well, but he's a good liar. Like he has an explanation for the cat. He has a fucking explanation for when one of his creations kills the dean and then they bring him back to life. He has like they're not in jail for all that long before they're like, yeah, no, his story, I mean, looks like what he's saying is true. But then he's just like, you see him look at Barbara Crampton's character and you see him trying to figure out a way to get her out of the way. And he's just manipulating the hell out of it.
Well, that's what makes him such a good, and like villain isn't the right necessary term, because
like a foil. I think
foil. You know, like Dr. Hill is clearly the antagonist of this story, but Jeffrey Combs's character Herbert West is definitely he's much more like the devil on your shoulder, that you understand why the person they're listening to,
which
as
can,
opposed
like,
to
yeah. And I know we've been on, we're getting pretty high up on time, but I do want to hear your. First off, finish your thought, because I totally interrupted you. I'm so sorry. But like, I do want to hear your opinion on David Gale and his character, Dr. Carl Hill, because it is amazing.
I think Dr. Hill is a great example of a person who you understand. I mean, all right, you don't understand necessarily his infatuation with Barbara Crampton, or at least in a, that's acceptable kind of way. But you understand his what he's trying to do with the research. You understand the foil that he creates. I love how big and campy and fun his performance is, because I think that's a huge part of what makes some of the things that we mentioned that might be trigger warnings for people palatable. It's what makes it watchable and fun, and not just gross and creepy.
You can tell that David Gale is on board and he knows what kind of film he is, or what film he's in, by his delivery of "I will be famous."
Yes, exactly. Like
just before he gets a shovel to the neck.
I mean, he is like Gina Gershon in Showgirls. He is he understands the movie that he is in, even if other people do not. He does. And Jeffrey Combs, same exact thing. They both just understand what movie they are in and reveling in it through and through.
Yeah, no, David Gale, and let's. I do kind of because I want to give him more credit because dude's on the freaking poster. So I do feel like we should dive a little bit more into his character because he also shows up again in Bride of ReAnimator, from what I understand. But like he's known for the Guyver, the Brain, yeah, ReAnimator, Bride of ReAnimator. But and yeah, apparently like the gurney that he's on, or was that the gurney? Was he on the gurney, or was that because apparently the gurney in this was shared with the film Return of the Dead because the gurney already had a hole in it.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to buy and like auto and
well, like a
new
like
one.
a medical gurney is going to cost you a couple of grand because it's a medical gurney.
Yeah.
So as someone who's worked in film production, I have worked with so when you walk into a set that has a medical set, you can immediately tell the difference between what is a prop and what has been bought from a reseller, because what has been bought from a reseller weighs about 10 times as much as so if you buy something that is supposed to be a prop on a film set and it's supposed to be like a bag that a syringe that goes on, you can make that for very cheap and it will look 100% medically accurate. But an actual stand for a medical syringe, the bottom part of it weighs like 80 pounds. So no matter how tired you are, how long of a day you've had, no matter how big the bag that goes on top of the syringe, at no point will it ever topple over and pull those needles out of the person in the bed, because it's designed for medical professionals. And so the bottom is weighted as,
yeah.
And what you need for a set, which just looks appropriate, can weigh like 6 pounds overall. So there's just like 80 pounds of steel in the other one that's not in the other one. Like you can't break a lot of medical technology. It is just built too sturdy, because another thing that you can't happen when if someone is having a heart attack, you can't grab the defibrillator and have it crack because you grabbed it too fast. You need it to be sturdy, no matter how much adrenaline you have in your system, no matter how weird it, no matter what time of day it is, it needs to be fine. And so when you go into building sets, there are two very different price levels. And it's just one of those things, you can tell a good set from a bad set when they close the doors, because when you close the door, a lot of time it shakes the rest of the set because it's not mounted properly.
As a scenic carpenter, I completely understand what makes a good scenic wall with a door in it. And it's which by the way is much more challenging than I think people give credit to,
when the producer comes to you and says, we need to cut $3,000 out of the budget, as a scenic carpenter, you can immediately understand how, well, I guess we just won't mount anything to the floor, and everything will be
is also crazy
1x4s.
Because right now, especially, a lot of budgets have been cut, and it's the reason why I'm no longer working as a scenic carpenter right now, is because the cost of material is so expensive right now, and it is insane. And honestly, the quality of the sets is it suffers.
Yeah,
because of when you see, I don't know, the market is a weird fucking thing. So yeah, little details in a set like that, even just passing your walls or whatever you're working on, like even if it's like a set piece, over to a scenic painter. The idea of like, how good is your scenic painter versus how good is your scenic carpenter? I need to write like a love letter to scenic painters everywhere, because they make scenic carpenters look fucking great, because we make scenic carpenters make much more mistakes than I think people are aware of. But thanks to Bondo, oh, you can barely fucking tell, baby. And a good scenic carpenter knows how to hide that shit real well. But oh yeah, a whole nother fucking layer. Anyway, Ken, we've probably gone over the allotted amount of time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't have anything else. The only thing I was going to ask David is, do you have any plugs that you want to plug?
Do we want to? Okay. Well, you can follow us at Shutter_show on Instagram. You can also follow me at _DW Marlowe to find out my everyday musings and like trying to post less political stuff and more things of like adorable hamsters and bunnies. But yeah, outside of that, not too much.
Let's see here. For me, I have my Instagram and my Twitter at Ken Stachnik, KenStachnik. We have our Twitter and our Gmail, which are both at Shutter Show, at Shutter Show for Twitter, and then shuttershow@gmail.com for Gmail, obviously. But the other big thing that we need to talk about before we go, which we need to do soon, is what we are going to do next week and where you need to go to vote. And for me, well, first off, where you need to go is Instagram. You need to go to our Instagram at Shutter Show _ or at Shutter_show. I'll be running the polls. I always run the polls on our Instagram page because I primarily run our Instagram page. The one thing I do urge people to avoid, and I'm seeing this a lot and I don't understand the reasoning behind it, is I see people voting yes for one film and then yes for the other film. I don't understand why people do that, because it literally just cancels out their vote. So like this was literally like this ReAnimator was tied with Basket Case, but I had to go by the amount of no votes, which there were 8 no votes for Basket Case and 5 no votes for ReAnimator. So interesting.
It was pretty close, but I also noticed there were a lot of yes for both of them. So try to vote yes for one and no for the other if you can. It just makes it a lot. Vote yes on one of them. Yes, it makes the process a lot easier for us to figure out which one won. So it means I do a lot less math. Anyway, David, what's your movie choice? Ken, my movie choice is a Brian Yuzna directed film called Society, which was made in 1989. I think exited the 80s with a bang. This movie looks freaking crazy. I still have not seen it, but I've heard so much about it, and I'm fascinated to watch it. Well, very cool. Well, maybe we'll check that out, or we're going to check out the movie that I have suggested. Yeah, what have you suggested? I am suggesting the brand new film, the Shudder exclusive Psycho Gorman. Ooh. Should be interesting. We will see how things go, but we will have to find out next week when we come back and we hear what the people of the internet think that we should do, in which case we will do that movie. So until then, good night, good luck. And David, what's most important for our guests? What's most important is that you folks go fuck yourselves. Indeed. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We love you. Love you. Bye-bye.